upcoming election is more important than ever that we stay connected and stay linked together and work together so that we can build together. Everybody repeat after me. I'm a link in this chain.
I'm a link in this chain.
And it won't break here.
And it won't break here.
I'm a link in this chain.
I'm a link in this chain.
And it won't break here.
And it won't break here.
We are links in this chain.
We are links in this chain.
And we won't break here.
And we won't break here.
Ashe.
Ashe.
All right, so we're gonna take a deep breath, inhale, and slowly exhale. Now everybody is in the room. Secondly, grab that problem. Seek that goal. Why am I here? What do I need? What am I here to give? Inhale, 1, 2, 3, exhale. And then thirdly, the last breath, grab the problem that's been nagging at you, young brothers. Grab that thing that you want to get done tonight or this week, whether it's get a job or whatever, but stay focused. Lastly, inhale, 3, 2, 1, exhale, 2, 1. Thank y'all, man. Do it at home.
Those that put in the work for us to even be in this space. Those that, if they were alive today, would be in this space. Or if they were your big mama or great grandmama or whoever, they would say, hey man, get your butt down there to the Andrew Walter Young YMCA where black men are doing something, right? They tell you to be in this space. So we honor those folks. We honor those that did the work before. So first, if everybody could raise their right fist. And what we do here is a simple affirmation and a simple libation where we call the names of those in our own ancestry line, and we say Ashe or Amen or whatever it is to affirm those people and affirm that the work that they did for us to be here today. So if everybody could just, on 3, call out a name of somebody in your own bloodline, one of your own ancestors. And I'm going to start with my grandfather, Sylvester Emmanuel Williams. Ashe. I'll call your own. Ashe. 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 And now we want to call on those ancestors that did the work both nationally and internationally. Those names that we know, the Martin Luther Kings, the Marcus Garveys, those kind of folks that did work and for not just their own family, but for all of us. So let's call out their names, and I'll start with Kwame Ture. Ashe. 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 Call their names. Ashe. Ashe. And lastly, we're going to honor those that are yet to come, our children's children's children. Those that years from today will look back and say there were men that got together at the Andrew and Walter Young YMCA every Monday to do the work of our people. And hopefully they'll call our names. And for them we say Ashe. 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 All right.
Safe, sacred, and healing space. This is probably the only space in the United States, if not in the world, where black men can come and not have to look over your shoulder and wonder, man, am I in a space that people really have my highest and best interests at heart, right? So in this space right now, we also offer a space. If you had a challenging day, a challenging week, a challenging month, you might even have had a challenging life up to this point. And if that is you, we offer you the opportunity to come to the center, and all we gonna do is come and just surround you with love. Ain't nobody gonna judge you, ask no questions. We just want you to come to the center. So everybody get up, come and show Minister Service some love.
You may not have a car at all, but remember, brothers and sisters, you can still stand tall.
Our talk tonight is about the upcoming presidential election and how that can affect our communities. And then also what we really need to talk about too is how we can affect it, right? And when I say we, I'm talking about particularly us as black men. We got the Democratic side coming for us. We got the Republican side coming for us. Everybody wants this vote for a reason. So we need to talk about how we can leverage that. We need to talk about what that means for our communities as well. So I'm gonna have these brothers just give a quick introduction of yourself, like 90 seconds of your background, and then we'll get into the conversation.
My name is Michael McClure. I'm a union organized by trade. I've been organizing unions for about 10 years now. I've organized in about 9 states and 30 different cities. I'm thankful to call Atlanta home, but I'm born and bred in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I will never let y'all forget that a second of my life. Because I also recognize that for me, I'm blessed to be able to be building and working and organizing in the South. I know for a fact there's something in the South, in the water here, where oftentimes we're forgotten for so many movements, but also we're the ones that start and spark movements. So that is also one of my purposes in life. Labor union is great question, brother. Labor union is an organization that comes together for workers' rights, making sure they can fight for better pay, better treatment, and also less organized workplaces are right here in the South. Companies, corporations fight day in and day out, including Delta Airlines and many of the companies that we know and love, fight against having labor unions because it raises the pay for everybody across the city. So, yeah, thank you for asking, brother.
My name is Arkey Hodges. I am the president and founder of the Black Achievement Fund, which is a national nonprofit community economic development corporation. Our goal is to finance the grand development of Black America, and our way to do that is very simple. 10 million of us, $9 a month equals 90 million a month, and over $1 billion to finance this development. Right now, we have a little over 3,000 members in all 50 states. We have about 6 members internationally. We operate our very own Kemet Club private lounge in East Point. We also have a 118-acre piece of land 2 hours south of here in which we're developing our very first city. And I'll talk a little bit more about that.
My name is full name Austin Evans, but everybody usually calls me AE. And so myself, I'm a PhD student studying education and technology at Texas University. But outside of, I appreciate that. But outside of but outside of my educational journey, I'm a startup founder as well. So I'm the founder of an application called Catch It, and Catch It. The mission of Catch It is to digitalize word of mouth.
Civil rights movement, I worked in that too, not just the union or labor movement, but the movement overall to liberate black people. So that's how you can look at me. I started when I was very young. Some of you all in here, the size I was when I started, and still doing it, and I'm 70 now, so it's been a long time. Thank you.
Given this pivotal year, what do you think is the most important topic that we need to focus on? What is the most important topic that we need to focus on? Because quite often, we talk about the presidential election, right? But the local election leading up to the presidential election and getting our elected officials who are supposed to go to bat for us, what issues should we take to them? Like, what are the most important issues that we should take to them so it can trickle up?
That's a great question, brother. I think a few things, right? I think that every single person here is feeling the economic crunch right now, right? We feel that we go to the grocery stores, our dollars go less far. We feel that whenever we put gas in the tank, we feel like we can barely make it to the next check, right? Everybody is honestly check to check. The fact is that this has been the case for us as black folks for a very long time. And the fact is that many times as rural communities struggle, as white folks struggle, as suburban folks struggle, then we begin to talk about it as a national conversation. But this has to be a conversation when we think about our own economic justice and our own economic health for a very long time, right? We have to consistently see ourselves as part of that conversation. I would say that, for me, the most important piece of that is that this country can shift very quickly. This country can shift very, very, very quickly when it comes down to our economic state based on who's elected. For example, there's something called Project 2025. Anybody heard of about that yet? Right? Now, for me, I'm not big on saying this name or that name, but I also recognize that as we organize, we build power, especially when we think about the Black Liberation Movement. There are corporations, there are structures that aid these individuals, right? So for me, I'm less worried about an individual and more worried about the organizations that are behind them. One of those being the Heritage Foundation, many others, who literally the laws that we think about when it comes down to erasing our history in schools of critical race theory, right? When it comes down to erasing our rights, when it comes down to being able to vote. There are organizations that create these laws. Those organizations are the authors of Project 2025. That's pretty much the playbook that any Republican president would use. They've given playbooks before, but this is way different. So for me, the most important thing to recognize with this next election is the fact that there's a myriad, a coalition being built right now with over 100 organizations that want to change how this country runs for the next 50 years. And that's not everybody says that that's a moment that we should all care, right? Everybody says it's every single election cycle. It's for real this time, though, y'all. I mean it.
What we are facing is the most consequential presidential election or national election since 1960. This is the third most consequential in the history of America. The first one is the election between Rutherford B. Hayes and Tilden, the Tilden-Hayes Compromise, they called it, where the federal government decided to let the South go back to abusing black people after the Civil War. It ended Reconstruction, but only lasted 12 years. Jim Crow lasted 100 years after that. So that's the first one. The second one is 1960. The majority of black people in 1960 were Republicans. Why? Because Abraham Lincoln was a Republican, and Frederick Douglass was a Republican. In 1960, Martin Luther King got arrested working with students at the Atlanta University Center to desegregate restaurants and hotels and businesses in Atlanta. He was arrested, but not like the students were arrested who were taken down to the Atlanta jail and booked and kept overnight or for a few hours. He was put in a car, handcuffed, and driven down to South Georgia to a work camp, a prison, on some really ridiculous charge. And the fear was that Martin Luther King was going to be murdered. And so in 1960, black people were lobbying the Kennedy brothers, John Kennedy running for president, his brother Bobby Kennedy, who later becomes the Attorney General. And the Democrats actually dominated the South at this time. So the Kennedy brothers were afraid to upset the Democrats in the South by taking the side of black people, which was also the side of justice. So Coretta Scott King and other people lobbied and lobbied and lobbied and lobbied until finally the Kennedy brothers called the governor of Georgia and that they wanted Martin Luther King released from this prison camp, which they did. The next Sunday, you know what happened? Almost every black preacher in America talked about voting Democrat. Stop voting Republican. And to this day, the majority of black people vote Democrat. Not that they haven't sold us out. That's part of their game plan. It may not be as bad as the other, but the election today is one of those kind of elections, the national election. This will literally change the face of this country in the way those other two that I mentioned will do. If we do not step up, and I know a lot of people are conflicted. I hear it almost every day. I can't vote for the current President Biden because he's supporting genocide in Gaza, which is the truth. And not just supporting, America's actually at war. We are as at war with Palestinians as the Israelis are, right? Because we are supplying all that's needed for the war. And the other person who is openly declaring that he intends to become a almost dictator, and that he has no feeling for the population of people of color in this country. He will do worse than what he did the first time. So this is an election of great consequence. And we as black men have to decide, how do we talk about this in our community? We got 4 months, right? July, August, September, October, November. 4 months. And just as a real quick thing, especially for you young people, the presidency, the federal government affects everything in our life. They affect how the money is used. This is what I want, especially the younger people in here, to do. I want you to look up the federal government departments where the director is appointed by the president. All of the major stuff, whether it's the roads, whether it's the trains, whether it's airplanes, whether it's food, whether it's income tax, all of those are controlled by the federal government. And the head of the federal government is the president. They don't always win, but if they got control of both houses and the vote, and the authority of the president, they can pass anything they want. So we have to think about it not in terms of how we feel about people. I don't have no feeling about either one of them other than, I wish he wasn't there. Not like, send them to the corn patch or nothing like that, but maybe that too. But I want you to think about that, the consequences of the election more than the personalities of the election.
I am a little ambivalent about the conversation because I'm not an integrationist. I believe that we here in this country during the civil rights movement, we fought for integration as a means to a greater end, and not for integration to be an end in and of itself. I think that where we are today, we have moved from integration and we've moved closer to assimilation. And in doing so, we have diluted our culture. And if you talk to the women of our race, they'll tell you that the culture is the cure. The culture is the cure. The culture is the cure. I have no wish or desire to be an honorary European. What we're doing with the Black Achievement Fund is we're establishing our own cities, which provides us with the greatest level of municipal power in this country. When we establish our own city, we appoint our own police chief. We hire our own police officers. We appoint our own mayor. We appoint our own city council. Okay? The city that we're building, 100% of the hospitals free of charge. Let me give you an example. And I'm sharing this with you because what I'm saying today is that we have the ability to reestablish our own civilization here in America, and we have a better chance of doing it because of where we come from, our worldview and everything. Let me just talk to you real quickly about just healthcare. Let's say, for instance, using our model that I shared with you guys today, $9 a month, we spent $5 million and bought this building. We turn it into a health center, a hospital. We own it. We take another $5 million, we buy all of the state-of-the-art medical equipment. We own it. We also take this capital and pay the salaries of the doctors, the dentists, whatever. So when you go into this hospital or dental clinic, why would we have to charge you anything? What we're talking about is rebuilding the Black Wall Streets, rebuilding the Black Rosewoods, the Wilmington, North Carolinas, the Harlems. I'm a historian as well, and I'm so fed up. Every February, we want to talk about Black Wall Street. A brother has a shirt on right now, Black Wall Street, 1921. That's over 100 years ago. If we're going to tell our children on Black History Month that this was us at our height in America, we had our own communities. We had our own businesses, our own stores, our own schools, our own theaters, our own everything. So why isn't that the direction that we're taking our children in today? Why are we still going down the pathway of integration? And I'm not saying to, create a separate state within a state. We're already integrated. When you look at other groups, they're not demanding the same things, and I'm not saying we shouldn't be demanding the same things. But what I'm saying is that the most successful groups in this country are Asian Americans, and they're not integrated whatsoever. When you hear about the voting population, do you hear about the Asians? How many Asians are in Congress? But yet they have the lowest rate of incarceration, they have the highest median household income, they have the highest GPA, they have the highest number of people with college degrees here in America. And yet they're not integrated at all. They're not voting at all. They have their own everything. So this is the model that we're looking at. And I'll end this by saying, politics is still not insignificant. Even though we have to build our own communities and empower ourselves, we still have to understand the power that the ballot holds. And our ancestors fought and died for a very, very long time for us to secure that. So no matter how we feel, we still need to be active on that arena as well.
Just for context, I'm Gen Z, so I'm a Gen Z founder, Gen Z student. So as far as Gen Z, it's a lot of conversation about like how we're going to show up for this election or how the election flow. So the Douglas County commissioner they had their electoral race, and they had about like 19,000 signups, but only like 2,000 people participated. in the race. I think a big problem for that is just visibility, visibility and streamlined network effects for what we're talking about. And so when we think about movements, right, like what the fund is doing, or where other movements lie, where are these movements housed? Are they housed on Facebook, Instagram? Are we using Discord? Are we using big group chats? What are the communication tools that we can use that mirror mechanisms that we create through the culture, right? So when I thought about what Catch It looks like, I thought about how can I create a mechanism that allows for opt-ins, right? Or allows for us to take a different approach, an absentee approach, right? And allowing to create brand activations and allowing people after August 6th to sign up for absentee ballots and get them registered in and kind of facilitate such a manual process through the technology. And so thinking of these things and thinking about, kind of how we show up. But I think for us with Gen Z, visibility, and then also too, like, I think a big thing that I see in my community from a Gen Z perspective is just lack of awareness kind of for what's going on, right? Like we understand the presidential election, but I hadn't had anyone break down, right? Like it might not even be about the presidential election. What is the House doing, and how are these things kind of playing out? And so from our technology, we're getting interest from both parties, right? From the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And so a lot of times I show up personally bipartisan because I understand that the technology we're building could possibly influence the election from the Gen Z perspective. And so just being careful with that, of course, staying in my morality, excellence, humility, integrity, loyalty, stewardship, and teamwork. My mission in life is to empower an average generation, lead and transform their city. I think the hardest thing for inner city youth to do, I'm from the inner city, so I grew up in 4th Ward, right off Boulevard, myself, Atlanta native, Atlanta Public Schools graduate, went to Carver. My mural was actually done by Adidas. I was selected as an honor in Black excellence, so I teach a national community curriculum at Adidas called Winning at the Game of Life. And so what I say to everyone here, I think one of the toughest things to do for inner city Black males to know what to do next, right? So it's good to be in these spaces and get that.
Important this election is, right? And there's a couple of thought processes as to why it's so important. One of which is what happens after one party gets elected, or what happens when the other party gets elected, as it relates to us. And when I say us, I mean our community, the Black community. And as it relates to, we have terminology like insurrections. We have terminology like, going back in time in terms of as it relates to us as Black people being further oppressed than we already are. So can somebody speak to that as it relates to what the consequences could be of this election?
One of the plans of parts of our Project 2025 is making sure that Class F is something that's implemented across the board. Now, Class F means that all these government jobs and many of these areas that control so much of our daily lives we don't even think about will now be made to be political loyalists. That means that you can be removed if you are not loyal to the party or loyal to the president, as opposed to if you're doing your job. So now that means that when it comes down to the Department of Justice, if I, as somebody who works in the Department of Justice, thinks it makes sense to send somebody down here because there have been 10 police killings in the last year, and we need to actually investigate that. There have been multiple deaths across jails, which oftentimes the Department of Justice is who oftentimes initiated in having federal investigations in that process. Now, if my department is loyal to the president, and the president says, nah, ignore that shit, what happens? Or if my president doesn't actually appoint people who are appellate court judges that actually speak to the folks who are usually appealing these cases when it comes down to drug offenses, right? Because many of us understand what it looks like for the drug epidemic to have ravaged our entire families, right? I still got people locked up right now from it. So what happens when we have more folks who are now introduced to the justice system for nonviolent offenses? What happens when we have folks who are introduced to that system and the first judge they see says, nah, spend your life in prison? But they have an opportunity to appeal because they see legalization across the state. They see other things that are trending in our society, and they say, no, we want to appeal because the factors in my case mean that I should be able to appeal and be able to win. What happens when a Republican president has appointed people with Republican ideals who are all white across the board? Donald Trump didn't appoint not one Black appellate court judge. That's how this affects us in all these levels, right? whereas President Biden appointed 24, I believe, right? So I think that we have to see it as how many folks do you know who will be on appeal in the next 5 to 10 years, who be praying that we made the right decision. I think that systemically, our justice system, our education system, our Department of Education depends on us to make the right decision this time. But also, I'm not sitting here to say that these folks have done a whole lot for our people. I think it's always important to keep that at the front of our minds, that liberation has never come from the pen of a white man sitting in their house or a black man either. That liberation comes from us organizing in our communities, finding power in our organizations, finding power with one another, and seeing that our organizations can do the work of feeding us, can do the work of educating us, can do the work of freeing us, can do the work of liberating us. It is not about any person, but I believe that voting is a catalyst for the organizing. It's a start for the organizing. Also, us not going to the polls gives them another reason to say we don't care about this. What does it mean when they say we don't care? What happens the day after they say we don't care? They lock more of us up. They elect more folks who allow us to be locked up. They take away our benefits. Like in Georgia, they're able to close how can you close a hospital on the south side? How in the world can you close a hospital on the south side that serves poor and disenfranchised people without us being in an uproar when it happened? Right? I was the chief of staff for a city councilman right there in that area, Antonio Lewis, during that time. In an uproar the whole time. We're in an uproar the whole time and waiting for people to be in an uproar right behind us. When they know that we don't care, they do what the fuck they want. Excuse my language.
Worked at the UAW in Michigan and Detroit for several years, organizing people in car factories. And I said that because the work that you're doing in the South, one of the reasons people in the North get paid more is because they have union contracts. They're not going up and saying, can I get a raise individually? They have a whole union that say, we will shut this down if you don't give us a raise, if you don't give us health care, if you don't provide what we need, not just what you need. And so the South has traditionally been anti-union because it's anti-worker, and it's especially anti-black workers and brown workers. So here's one of the things, again, to think about. We cannot sit out of the fight and expect to get something that we want from it. Everybody understand what I'm saying? We can't say, I don't like them, so I ain't gonna do nothing. It doesn't matter whether you do something or not, something's gonna be done to you. The question is, are you able to mitigate what's being done to you? Are you able to influence what is being done to you or will be done to you? Can you stop what will be done to you? So if you're not in this fight, you really have nothing to say. You just got your ass kicked and you didn't care until it was hurting. You understand what I'm saying? That we can't sit this out on a local, national, statewide level. We cannot sit it out and then expect to get what we want. We have to fight for that, which is our history in this country. Nothing has been given to us. Slavery wasn't ended by Abraham Lincoln. Slavery was ended, as Frederick Douglass said, by a war. And almost 100,000 black men fought in that war. And thousands of black women aided in that war. And some of those men and women followed the leadership of Harriet Tubman, who was considered a general in that war. We weren't granted civil rights. That's why I said about the Tilden Hayes Compromise. To allow the South to go back ruling black people under the Southern white racist rules was the compromise that the North made in order to get the presidency after Lincoln had been killed. That made us suffer under Jim Crow for 100 years. 100 years of being told we got to sit in the back, or you can't come in here, or you can't vote, or you can't buy from this place. You can't be out of here by sundown. Y'all know what a sundown town is? White towns that wouldn't let black people stop if they were driving their car. You better be out of this town by sundown. And it wasn't an idle threat. It wasn't an idle threat. Black people hanging from trees who didn't comply. So we cannot sit the fight out. Now, I'm not telling you to vote Democrat or Republican. You vote your conscience. But you need to do some serious study and investigation of the consequences of either one of those being elected, the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. Where is the best shot for us? This is warfare. Y'all know something about Fred Hampton. He used to talk about politics. Yes, sir. It's war without bloodshed, right? War without bloodshed. We cannot sit out politics and expect to gain economically, socially, educationally. The last 3 elections in Atlanta of black mayors, do you know they won by less than 1,000 votes against a white candidate? Many people predict that the next one is not going to make it. Why? Because more white people moved into Atlanta. And many of them support the policies that would oust a black mayor.
This is consequences, consequences. I'm a businessman, I'm a real estate investor and developer, and I'll be honest and say that I make more money doing Republican presidents, but I'll never vote for a Republican president. And the reason is, brother, you just said it, is you vote your conscience. And for me, my conscience means more than money. You can't buy my conscience. And I think that's what the Republicans have tried to do with black men by telling black men, we're gonna open up the doors and help you with loans. We're gonna open up the doors and help you become competitive with white businesses, which is a lie, which is a lie. As a businessman, I can tell you that it is extremely difficult for a black person to go to a bank and get money to compete with a white developer. It just won't happen. So when you're out here and you're talking about consequences, don't vote for the jock. Don't vote for the person who seems, you know, the most fun and so on and so forth. This is serious business, you know, and you have to not just vote your conscience, but you also have to look at the facts. You know, when I'm sitting up here and I'm looking at this election today, yeah, I made money with Donald Trump. So many people made money with Donald Trump with the PPP and all of these types of things. But look how many racial incidents we had during the presidency of Donald Trump. Look at the percentage of white violence against black people, all right? He has emboldened white racist people to come and violently attack black people. If you look at just Friday, we just had another mass shooting in Arkansas at a black grocery store. How many of you guys heard of that? Yes. Not many. And that's another consequence. It's the lion hunter who writes the lion's history. So if we have a white supremacist in the White House, what type of narrative do you think he's going to feed the whole world about this country? What type of narrative do you think they're changing in our school systems with our children? I moved here from New York in 2014. Every year for Black History Month, kids watch the Eyes on the Prize civil rights documentary. I came down here, nobody even saw the civil rights, the Eyes on the Prize. And I'm saying to myself as a historian, this is actual video footage of the civil rights movement happening. So if you're not using this as your resource in teaching black history, what are you using? So the consequences are far and beyond what we think. The consequences is, are we going to allow racist people to overtake this country and to transform this country into a South Africa? Because that's what they're trying to do. They realize that this is a majority rule country and they set it up that way. But they don't have the genetics to continue to rule.
What can we do to hold these politicians more accountable for what they are or what they advocate for at the when they're campaigning, and how can we keep them accountable?
A lot of decisions are data driven. So if you could link the data, talking to your politicians, I think that'll really be powerful. Like being able to track the data. A lot of data that they have from canvassing and politics are internal. So they have a lot of data on you, like your propensity to do something. Not a lot of consumer facing things, but I would say that you hold them accountable by tracking and looking at the data and realizing that a lot of the data is not tracked to give you the transparency.
There's a website called Open Secrets, right? We know who, right? Because nobody's gonna give you $1 million if they don't expect to call you one day and do what you want them to, right? So if you get oil and gas money, you're probably going to be pro oil and gas. If you get a lot of labor union money, you're probably going to be pro working class people, right? That's typically how it goes. Don't trust their words, look at their money, right? Don't trust their words, do your own research. Also, follow organizations and experts that do the research along with you, right? There are amazing organizations that do great things. Civic Innovation here in Atlanta, Working Families Party. There are a lot of great organizations that really hold these folks accountable, not just for what they say they're going to do, for what they actually have done.
But real quick, like if you look at any industry, education doesn't matter. Like if you look at where the dollars flow, you'll see what they care about, right? If I go down to Georgia State and I see what they're spending money on, that's how I can see, you know what I mean? So follow the money, you'll see where.
Why are black politicians refusing to implement policies that will benefit the black father? Because that's a demographic of vote that you guys are missing out on. Even down in Florida, he won because he passed policies towards white fathers. And if you do your checking right now, white politicians are winning. Why are black politicians refusing to tap into that black father demographic for votes?
It's not that we don't care about stuff. We're not organized. What transformed America was an organized black community, right? Whether it's in the South, whether it's in the North, the East, or the West. We're not organized to benefit our own selves. We don't have a set of demands that any politician, to get our vote, you got to do these 5 things. And that's one of them. There are black politicians today, though, that are unlike those in the previous decades, who are only there for themselves. That's the answer to your question. And those who are only there for themselves should not be there much longer. But that's up to us. We have to be conscious people. We cannot walk through this unconsciously. And the Black Man Lab is a perfect example of raising our consciousness so that we can figure out a strategy and tactics to both protect ourselves and to advance ourselves.
This upcoming election is more important than ever that we stay connected and stay linked together and work together so that we can build together. Everybody repeat after me. I'm a link in this chain.
I'm a link in this chain.
And it won't break here.
And it won't break here.
I'm a link in this chain.
I'm a link in this chain.
And it won't break here.
And it won't break here.
We are links in this chain.
We are links in this chain.
And we won't break here.
And we won't break here.
Ashe.
Ashe.